Imagine this. There's no food in your house. Your child is starving. People are dying on the streets around you. In that moment, could you dare to dream that one day your country would rule the world? In 1960, a Chinese farmer couldn't even imagine that. But just 60 years later, his grandson is probably driving a Tesla, powered by a battery made in China. This is China's story. Not just the rise of a nation, but a story of human stubbornness, suffering, and an unbreakable will to survive. 4,000 years ago, when most of Europe was still living in caves, China was already inventing paper, the compass, gunpowder, the printing press. We take these things for granted today, but they were all born on Chinese soil. For centuries, China was the wealthiest civilization on earth. Through the Silk Road, Chinese goods reached all the way to Rome. But here's where the story takes its first twist. By the 1800s, Europe was exploding with the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines, factories, modern weapons. China, they said, we are the greatest civilization. We have nothing to learn. That arrogance cost them everything. The British arrived with opium and systematically addicted an entire generation of Chinese youth. When China resisted, war broke out, and China lost not just the battles, but its dignity. Humiliating treaty after humiliating treaty. Foreign powers controlling Chinese ports, a proud nation, colonized on its own soil. The Chinese have a name for this period, the century of humiliation. Remember that phrase. Because that pain, it becomes a fuel for everything that comes next. After a brutal civil war, Mao Zedong stood before the nation and declared, China has stood up. Millions wept because they truly believed it. Mao wanted rapid modernization, but he chose the wrong path. The Great Leap Forward sounds inspiring, right? But in reality, farmers were forced to make steel instead of growing crops. Fields rotted, and 40 million people starved to death, the largest man-made famine in human history. And yet, China didn't break, because the people survived, and they remembered. This is where the story's biggest twist happens. 2 years after Mao's death, Deng Xiaoping, a quiet, unassuming man, came forward with a radical idea. He said, it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. Translation, whether it's communism or capitalism, whatever moves the country forward will do it. He opened the doors to foreign investment, special economic zones were created, farmers were given back the right to work their own land. The result? In just 25 years, 800 million people lifted themselves out of poverty. Nothing like it had ever happened in the history of the world. Today, China doesn't just make clothes and shoes, they've landed a rover on the moon, they've built their own space station, they're leading the world in AI, electric vehicles, and quantum computing. But here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. Can a nation truly sustain its rise when its people's freedoms remain restricted? Can economic power alone replace human dignity? The century of humiliation gave China its hunger. But what happens when hunger becomes dominance and dominance becomes fear? The next 20 years will answer that question. So I want to ask you, do you think China will become the world's #1 superpower, or will its own contradictions hold it back? Drop your answer in the comments. If you found this story powerful, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that the history books forgot to make interesting.